welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. Special video, 3 videos in one. You're really going to get your money's worth in this video, so drop a comment in the comment section. Be sure to like, subscribe. First part, the unbearable niceness of being. All right, so Rolexes. I mean, I would like the idea of just wearing my Rolexes all the time, just being a Rolex guy, but I can't do it. For some reason, after, I'd say a month or 2 months, a couple months, I have to put something else on. Why? Well, there are a couple different reasons. I mean, yes, we get tired of the same old watch, but why is it that I don't want to put on another Rolex? I mean, I got to put on something kind of crappy. I got to like come down. And you know, I think the people that are able to just wear a Rolex all the time are these one watch guys. And it's almost like they appreciate their watch, but they don't have an over appreciation of their watch. And I think that's my problem. I think that, you know, there's a certain weight and heaviness to wearing such an expensive watch. And you know, it's almost like going to Tokyo with your children. You kind of have to be on the ball. You have to kind of watch yourself a bit. You have to be careful. You know, you can't drink too much or at all, lest you lose those precious parts of your life, right? Whereas when you're by yourself, you know, you wind up in a gutter the next day, that's okay. You brush yourself off and, you know, take the train home. But, you know, with a Rolex watch, and this is where I'm going, it's a lot of responsibility in the mind. It weighs on the mind. I'm not talking about the physical, you know, weight of the watch. I'm talking about the responsibility. And after a few months or a certain amount of time, I just need to step back and just kind of mentally relax. Just put something on that I don't care about. And it's interesting. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Now, some people would say that's a mark of having watches that you can't really afford, if you have to worry about them. And there's a point there. And things have sort of changed because I used to be able to afford my watches. Now I'm not so sure. See, they've gone up. And whatever this figure is, it's going to depend on the person. But for me, the sweet spot in terms of watch cost has always been $5,000. And that's because it hurts. It's got to hurt, okay? It's got to hurt. Or you're not going to appreciate the watch. You're not going to feel like you really accomplished something through getting it. But it can't be too cheap. Otherwise, anybody could have it. It doesn't feel like you overcame something. It doesn't feel special. And you know, how a watch makes you feel, that's a huge part of it. And so for me, and this is a personal thing, it's always been $5,000. And 5 years ago, $5,000 could take you many different places in the Rolex line. You could get an Explorer too, a sub, a no-date sub. You know, you might not get a box and papers, but you could get a lot of pieces, and a couple thousand on that, and you could go GMT. And we used to think that was so, you know, expensive back in the day. Wow. 2020 gives us a little perspective, right? But things have changed, and the watches have gone up. And so I've always believed that if you are putting your money into an item that you can't really afford to lose, then you shouldn't have it. You know, that's always been sort of my philosophy. And while $5,000 would have hurt, yeah, I'd get over it. Now, $10,000 would hurt more. You know, would I be destroyed? No. You know, mentally, of course I would. But I guess it's just past the point of, yeah, if something happens to the watch, not that big of a deal, right? So yes, perhaps the watches have exceeded my level of comfortability, you know, and that's a reason to go maybe Tudor or with a lower end Rolex, an Oyster Perpetual OP, you know, even an older one. But really, it's fine, and I do enjoy the watches, so it's not that big of a deal. But I have to say, as much as I do enjoy watching my watches go up in value, I would actually prefer a world that hadn't changed. I mean, I would prefer to live in a world where my no-date sub was still $4,000 and my Explorer 2 was still $4,000. You might be surprised by that, but it's changed my mindset, the increase in value of the watches, and I think it can't help but change everybody's perception, and we start to look at these watches not just as watches that are fun to wear, but watches that are fun to wear that are kind of acting like investments and are going up in value, and it changes the way you appreciate them and think about them, and it changes the whole dynamic of the collecting experience, and one that I don't think is for the better. If we were living back in 2013, I'd have more pieces now. I gotta say, I think 3-4 pieces is the limit, but I would experiment a little bit more. I'd go with pieces that I probably wouldn't, just to try them out. So as much as I appreciate the increase in value from just the point of view of a pure watch enthusiast, it's a shame, because it means less pieces. It means having to think about your purchases a little bit more. It means a little bit more responsibility when wearing them. It means maybe not taking them to certain countries that you might want to. So it's not all peaches and cream, the increase in value. And I got to be honest, if I could just flip a switch and go back to 2013 when, these watches were expensive and special and took a lot of money to get, but they weren't so expensive. Then I think I would. I think I was having a little bit more fun during that time. And it's interesting because I keep talking about 2013. That's when I got in the watch game. And people are listening to this, and for them, the ship had already sailed at that time. People like Archie Luxury, who he can't ever go really pre-ceramic Rolex anymore because he's paid such low prices and sold them for such, relative to 2020 prices, low prices that he kind of can't get back into them. And so who knows, maybe somebody will watch this video in 2025 and say, I remember when, the sports watches were just $10,000, just an even $10,000, and now they're 20 and 25, and it's, and who knows, maybe in 2025 I'll look back at this video and think, Austin, you should have been making videos lamenting how the prices have gone up. You should have been out there buying pieces. Look at they hit 20. Now I don't know if they're going to hit 20. I don't know if prices are going to rise, but is there a limit? I feel like there has to be. I always thought it would be around the 5, but then it hit the 10, and I don't know. I guess I just don't know. So anyway, the unbearable niceness of being, and that's driven me to this. And right before this, I was wearing a Vostok, and I wore it for a week, and you might have seen it in the video I made for Paolo and Ryan, and I had such a good experience with that watch. What did I like about it? Number one, the date. Coming off the no date sub, it was really nice having the date, and the date placement of this watch is really interesting between the 4 and the 5 indices. Number two, the subdial, the second subdial. Look at the pattern on that subdial. It's got conical ridges, and that's kind of hard to achieve, and it goes to the quality of the dial. It's kind of amazing and kind of scary what they can achieve with dials these days. If you can see any sort of tell that this is a cheap dial, let me know, but I think that this dial could stand up against multi-$1,000 watch dials. And look at that little triangle there. That's a fully loomed little triangle. They didn't have to include that. They did, and they could. And it goes to the little things on the dial. Check out the date window. Is that just a cutout? No, it's actually beveled, just like a Rolex date window. That's pretty amazing. And the last thing I'll talk about is the chapter rings. Now, check out the chapter ring on the second subdial. It's beautiful, it's crisp, and one thing about a dial is how it works and integrates with the hands. And one thing, as you know, that I really appreciate is
when the hands reach into the chapter ring. And on that second subdial, look at that second hand reaching right to the center of that seconds track. That's perfect. And look at the minute hand. The minute hand has that little end that reaches into the chapter ring. The chapter ring has the minute markers at the 5, 10, 15, and so on. And it makes telling the time easy. It's that little attention to detail that you appreciate.
So there you go. There's my experience with that watch, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it's always nice to rediscover and, appreciate again a piece that maybe you took for granted. And I'm on to the Tudor. And where does this Tudor come from? And that's the Tudor Echo Chamber. And I've been thinking about getting a Tudor guides, okay? And I'm not gonna tell you what it is. What a controversial purchase. I'll just tell you that. I don't know how to feel about it. Yesterday I was pretty gung-ho. Today a little less gung-ho. I think I want to see it next week, and we'll see. But, hey, any guesses on what it is? Anyway, I was checking out videos of this watch, and then I stumbled upon Inland Watch Reviews channel, and I'll put a link to his channel. And he's just an older guy in the Midwest, but he has a couple Tudors, a Tudor like this. In fact, he's got the exact same Tudor Hydronaut 1, and he's got a Hydronaut 2, which is such a interesting watch. I mean, it's so hideous, it's beautiful, right? Or maybe not right, I don't know, that's an opinion thing, but I started watching his videos, and I sort of rediscovered my love for Tudors. And I dropped a comment in his comment section, and then he wrote back, and he was like, hey man, I love your videos. You turned me on to Tudor. So I turned him on to Tudor. He got Tudor. He made videos. I watched his video, and I'm reintroduced to Tudor. So that's kind of interesting. And he's just, he was just talking about the unparalleled value of these Tudor Hydronauts. Their Rolex quality with an ETA movement, refined ETA movement at, a $2,000, $3,000 price tag. Fantastic. So, I would have sold this too not long ago. I was making a video, and I remember saying something like, Tudor's just a Tudor, it's not a Rolex. And that was a point in my life where if you had pulled me aside and said, look, I'll just give you what you paid for the Tudor, I would have said, take it, just get it away from me. I want to use that money on a Rolex. I was gulping, slurping, drinking the Rolex Kool-Aid to the extent to where I couldn't even appreciate my own watches. And, I probably what happened is I was looking at a watch, and sometimes when you're looking at a watch and you're desiring a watch, you look at the pieces in your collection and you think, okay, what can I sacrifice? And you don't start looking at it objectively. It's hard to. It's your own collection and your own watches, but you look at it in a very subjective way through that lens of wanting that piece, and you start to perhaps resent those watches and those purchases, and you think, how can I get out of it? How can I turn these pieces into that? And of course, we often do, and we enjoy that piece, and then we come back and we realize, I shouldn't have sold the Tudor Hydronaut. It's beautiful. Beautiful on a rainy day like today. Look how wet and robust it is in the rain. I mean, this is the perfect weather for such a watch. And, so the gentleman at Inland Watch Reviews sort of made me rediscover this watch, and he was wearing his, and I was watching him wear his, and I had mine on. It was great. And so it's the whole hobby is a series of ups and downs and appreciation and taking watches for granted, and it's there's very little stability in our way of thinking. It's the non-watch people that wear their watch for years on end, and you look down and say, hey, it is a Rolex, it is a Datejust. I don't really think about it. I'm glad it's not gone. Beautiful watch. How could I take it for granted? I mean, just looking at it right now, and the way that Hydronaut is written in silver with the serifs, and it's sort of raised. It looks so beautiful. So I've at least learned to appreciate a little bit what I have. All right. And last but not least, the cost of an icon. Well, wow, I was checking out the Rolex website, checking out Datejust. And look, the Datejust I think to have is the iconic Jubilee bracelet fluted bezel Datejust. I mean, the fluted bezel, it's total Datejust, okay? And it's sort of a variation on the screwback pattern that Rolex used to use. And in fact, you used to be able to screw out the crystal, and that was the pattern, and that pattern sort of evolved into what we know as the fluted bezel. And the Jubilee bracelet came out on the Datejust. It was the 45th anniversary of, no, it was the 40th anniversary of Rolex. Yeah, 1945, that's right. And so, yeah, it was going to be called, in fact, the Datejust was going to be called the Jubilee, but they ended up calling it the Datejust, and the bracelet became the Jubilee. And so anyway, that's the icon. And Rolex makes you pay for it. I was checking it out, and the difference between the Oyster bracelet and the Jubilee bracelet is not much. I want to say this much, okay? Not that much, all right? But everything else equal, the difference between the fluted bezel and the smooth bezel, over $1,000, okay? Over $1,000. Wow. I mean, look, I know it's white gold versus steel, and it probably takes a little bit more effort to make that pattern, but that much? I mean, are you really paying that much for the material and the effort? No, you're paying for the icon. That's the cost, that's the tax for that iconic piece, and it's kind of interesting. And when you're talking a Datejust 41, I mean, just the difference between everything equal, on a Jubilee bracelet with a, fluted versus smooth steel bezel, $2,000 difference, more or less. So that's what you're paying for, the iconic status and the iconic iteration of the Datejust. And is it worth it? I don't know. That's the question. I mean, yes and no. It's the iconic version is the one to have, but at that kind of price, it's not value, but it's almost like I probably would pay it, to get that icon if that's what I wanted. But really, the real smart money, I think, in the Datejust line is the smooth bezel and the Oyster bracelet. Now, it's got the polished middling, so it's a little fancy for my taste, but I saw one at the sports club the other day. An older guy was changing in the locker room, and he opened his locker, and I could see in his shoe what I saw was it looked like a Datejust to me. And I was watching him change out of the corner of my eye. Probably looks like some pervert. I was a Rolex pervert, it's true. And yeah, it was a Datejust. And he had, the smooth bezel and the Oyster bracelet, and it was just so all around beautiful. And that's a great watch. Great. I mean, it's like the Explorer or the Oyster Perpetual line. It's just so you could wear it in any situation, casual or business attire. Just a all-around great watch, and it's a great price, especially when you consider the Jubilee braceleted fluted bezel versions. Your money's going to go better with that Oyster braceleted smooth bezel version, and it's a beautiful piece. Get it in the blue dial. That's the one watch daily wear that could fit anybody. I just wish that they would make the non-polished center links an option. Why not? You could always also later on buy the Jubilee bracelet. But I don't think you could have the bezel switched out. Now that's an interesting question. Could you do that? I know you could switch out the dials. They do that. But what about the bezel? That's a good question. I don't know about that. But you could always put a Jubilee on at a later date. It'll cost you, but you could. But anyway, that's the value money right there. Just a 36 millimeter blue dialed Oyster braceleted smooth steel bezel Datejust. The iconic version is costly. And the question, is it worth it? Let me know in the comment section what you think. I think it is, but it's not. Take care. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.